And welcome everyone to the next edition of Unscripted and Unstoppable. I am your host, Laureen Quick. This month, we are exploring a different kind of movement, not the kind that comes from being or rather having everything figured out, but the kind that begins when something inside you is ready to be expressed, even if you don't know or feel fully ready yet. Because expression is not the result of clarity, it is actually often where clarity begins. And for many women, especially in midlife, there comes a moment when what's been quiet for a very long time starts to ask for form, a truth, a desire, a shift, something that no longer wants to stay unspoken. Today's conversation lives right inside that space. I am joined by Shire Lyon, an entrepreneur and founder of Shire Lyon Ads, her own digital marketing agency. Shire works with individuals and small businesses navigating growth and transition. I met Shire a little while ago, and what stood out to me in our conversation wasn't just what she does. It was actually how she speaks about the moment when you stop waiting and you begin to respond to what has been asking to come forth, what you know is your truth. Shire brings a grounded, honest perspective on building something of your own while also handling the realities of life, whether that is family responsibilities or personal responsibilities, goals and aspirations beyond what you're looking to now begin to express. Because as women, we always carry many, many roles. And in this conversation, we will explore what it really means for us to find our voice, not by becoming louder, but becoming more certain, by becoming more honest about who we are. So wherever you are, whether it's something or someplace, I should say, that you are waiting in a holding pattern, or whether there is something rising in you now that's beginning to actually speak out. This conversation is an invitation to listen. Listen to what might be expressed and stay open to that. So, Shire, I'm going to start by just asking you the first question I have for you today, and that is, when you think about finding your voice, what does that actually mean to you in these midlife years?
That's a really good question. I feel like I have spent a lot of time in my life finding my voice, finding who I am, and trying not to define myself based on the relationships around me. Um, what it means right now is sure, I own a business, and it's a responsibility, but when something calls to me, I need to take that personal time to go and do it because if I wait, I'm just gonna keep pushing things off to tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. There's always going to be something that gets in the way. And lately I realized I promised myself I would try and write a book and get it published because that's my passion. Marketing is great. It's fun. It's really dynamic. which is how I kind of ended up here through a series of changes. I've spent probably, like every 5 to 10 years of my adult life, there has been a transition, a change. I've moved back and forth halfway across the country, so um, a lot of that definition is about knowing what's inside, and not letting the other changes in my life kind of take over.
My experience has been very similar in the sense that I have gone through many life transitions. And what I got from your response to that question really was we need to be listening to that and not trying to hold on to rigidly what we already have, but instead recognize that part of our experience on this earth really is this process of growth and transformation. And it's done through these shifts and changes. Things show up for us, and our heart reaches out for them. But we often deny that because we think, oh, I should be doing this. I need to be stable. I need to, be wise. I need to be whatever it is I think other people are looking at me and thinking I should be doing. And we ignore what the voice in our heart says about our dreams, our hopes, our aspirations, and what is calling us.
Yeah. I mean, how can you support anyone else if you suppress all those things in you? As my kids got older, I realized I couldn't give very good advice if I was just taking the steady, stable decision all of the time. And I was never exemplifying what I really wanted them to be. During the middle of the pandemic, I got laid off. And I started to realize, I really don't want to work for other people's hopes and dreams. Like I'm not getting to do the things I really want to do. And if I wait for someone to give me permission, that might never happen. I need to take control of things and not be afraid of what happens next. I mean, a business has ups and downs, good days, bad days, but I get to own that and I get to say, nope, my goal this year is to make sure I make it to the gym this many days a week, or I get to stop and do things with people I'm close to when I want to. Like you just have to take the risk at some point. You can't always be stable because then you'll never do anything you dream.
And so I totally agree with that. So here's my question to you. How do you know that it's your voice speaking? When I mean, because sometimes it feels very confusing inside us, right? We have all these messages. How do we know it's our heart speaking to us versus something that like we think we should do because we're responsible or some silliness like that?
Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I think you need to work through it. I recommend therapy, journaling, talking to a trusted friend, and asking them not to really say very much back, just to let you talk it out. I mean, hey, if you have to talk to the wall, but kind of talk it out over a series of days, weeks, and then you can kind of dabble and see if it feels right before you just whole commit to a situation.
Okay. So don't just listen to that voice and then test it a bit with baby steps
Yeah, yeah,
and see if that brings you more joy or if that is not something you really want to do. Right.
yeah, yeah. The
So it's
reason I never became a writer from the outset was because I was afraid that if I became a writer and it was a job, then I wouldn't enjoy it anymore because it was a have to do and not a want to do.
Mhm.
So, those are the things that I think about. What happens if I do this all the time? Will I really enjoy it? And is it okay if I don't enjoy it every second?
Well, and we're not going to enjoy everything every second anyway. That's kind of unrealistic if you think about it. But
Yeah,
at the end of the day, when you're getting ready for bed, are you happy? Right?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
are you every night groaning because the morning is coming and you don't want it? Then obviously that's not what you want to be doing. Yeah.
No,
So
no
learning,
Mondays.
yeah, exactly. Every Sunday night, ready the start of the week. Yeah, no. So really it comes down to starting to, on a regular, consistent basis, listening to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
reflecting on it. I mean, sometimes, you see something like I watch crazy, unrealistic things, and I'm like, that would be great. And then I start to think about it, I'm like, well, but I don't know actually. Would it be that great? I kind of like to do things for myself or, the little things.
So let's say I found something that I think is speaking and I'm going to
Mhm.
follow that. I have, as a woman who's 67, I've spent a lot of years, many years, trying to modify, adjust, adapt to everyone else around me and what they need. So how do I keep that clarity? How do I keep separating out my true voice from all of the people around me and all the whatever patterns that I've developed over time? How do I hold that? Do you have advice for that?
Oh, that's the hardest part, right? Because, things come and kind of try to take over. I think it's more than just focus. I think it's being able to plan and adjust like what's important to you in that moment, in that day. Um, Sometimes you do have to let things take a little bit of a backseat because there is something really important, or, sometimes you have to tell everybody to wait and they have to get used to it. It's kind of listening to that inner voice a little bit about what's the right time? How do I still do the things that are important to me? Like the number one for me is, my kids are adults. So when they go, "Hey mom, do you want to go do this thing?" I try not to say no because, they don't say it all the time. So some of the things that I want that besides that have to kind of take a little bit of a backseat. So it's just kind of going with what feels comfortable. For me, a lot of it's about, does it make me feel stressed? Anything that makes me feel stressed is where I have to go, should I do it or should I put it aside?
I think that's a good rule of thumb. If I'm feeling stressed out about it, that would be a no. Can't do that. Yeah, and again, it goes back to just staying connected to yourself, and also anticipating that there are going to be conflicts of, for a lack of a better word, conflicts of interest. There are going to be competing
Yeah, yeah,
demands for your time and your energy, and so it's okay to give some. But if you give it all away, which tends to be our habit as women,
yep,
you'll find that you've made no progress towards what you believe to be, have said to be important to you. So sometimes you're going to have to say no. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
that's hard for us, but we can do it. I know we can.
yeah.
Yes, we can.
And sometimes you have to listen to your heart and not your head. Logic, being logical all the time doesn't bring you joy unless, well, no, I can't think of anyone that, if you're just strictly logical all the time, you end up at joy. It's
Mhm.
it's kind of rolling with the emotions a little, especially because, your time with people, you never know how much that is. And your time, to do anything, there's no specific timer on that. So you have to really try to find that balance. Like logic is important. We all have to pay the bills, but um, you know, at the end of the day, when you're sitting down reflecting, how do you feel?
Yeah. Well, because, we struggle with this compromise thing, right? We compromise away our life or our dreams because of practicalities. And so, even if it means I have to get up an hour earlier to make my dream the priority for the first hour of the day, that is more appealing to me than sleeping in that hour and losing ground.
Yeah.
Um, so there's knowledge that those conflicts will come. And then there is, what are you willing to do? How bad do you want this? How hard are you willing to work for it? Because it's not easy. I always think about some of the fairy tales we grow up with, and it's sort of like, oh, and they lived happily ever after. And it happens within a few weeks, months, whatever. And la da da da, life is grand. And it's sort of like, no, not really. That isn't how it works. We continue to work towards our dreams, our aspirations, and continue to support our life and the people that we love as well. So yeah, it's a process. It does not happen overnight. So I know we've talked about, how important it is not to wait to pursue what matters. Tell me the story about what helped you move from a place where you were willing to wait to a place where you are no longer willing to wait anymore.
Um, that's a good question. I mean, I got the first push, the first really big thing. I didn't necessarily have a choice. I didn't have a job, so now I had to make this decision. Is this what I want to do? What am I going to pursue? Um, and so that made me start thinking, well, why do I wait to do things? What's inside me that says hold back, no, not safe. Um, Sometimes I realize that, it's the voices of other people in my head saying like, well, that's not a good decision. And well, now you're being selfish. So it's more about recognizing that those voices aren't my voice. That's what everybody else, well, it's not even necessarily that they say it or they might not even think it. That's what I hear. That's what I'm interpreting things as. Um, and by the time when my kids started graduating high school, I started realizing, okay, well, they're gonna go do their own thing, but what do I have? Who am I? What am I going to do when they have their own lives? And I started to realize it was going to be really empty.
Mhm.
It's going to wake up, work, but then like all the things I do are for other people. And I panicked. Like, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. So
I
that
had,
that was the moment where it was like, what do I want?
uh-huh. I had a similar experience where my daughters grew up and they were off at college and then they graduated from college and then began living their lives. And my oldest daughter, I wanted to hike and I was always asking her to hike with me. And she finally said, Mom, you need to get some friends because I can't hike with you so much. I mean, I love you and I want to hike with you, but I can't hike every weekend with you. So you need to make some new friends. And it was like, what? I kind of had this thought that the family was just going to keep rolling along. And then I realized, like you, oh my gosh, they have their lives and I'm in it, but I'm not the center of it anymore. Let's figure out what is at the center of my life. Yeah. And I also
Yeah,
think what you said earlier too is really important to recognize we have these callings in us. And my experience has been either you take them on your own terms. Or if they're really important, life will find a way to push you over a cliff and force
yeah,
you. And I would much rather choose it than to find myself laying in the bottom of a ravine, picking myself up and wondering what in the world am I going to do now? So
very
it's
true.
it's that listening, 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 and then working, like you said, to distinguish between is that my voice or is that someone else's? And you just have to stop for a few minutes and spend some time with yourself and ask that question instead of ignoring it and continuing on with life as it is. Yes. Okay. So, you mentioned journaling a couple of times as we've talked. Tell me more about how you use journaling to help you hear yourself more clearly, understand what you need to do next.
I actually use journaling in two ways. I kind of journal my experiences and to reflect on them. I don't always go back and read it afterwards, but in that moment, reflect on my experience, how I felt, whatever the moment might be, and just kind of processing that. But then on the other side, I realized that a lot of times I tell myself a lot of negative or unproductive things. So I keep a separate journal where I tell myself all the positive things. More in the manifesting. I tell myself, this is what happened, anything, depends on what's going on in my life. So if I have a really bad day, kind of rewrite it. This is what happened today. This was what was great, and rewrite the story to what I want it to be. And, that gives me time to reflect on what do I really want? What would really make me happy? Of course, one of the things I realized, as I was doing that part of it is more time to do what I want to do, what I like to do. Um, you know, some stuff that's more just in the hobby sort of thing instead of about work. I kind of let work take over, whether it's, work at the house, the agency, I let that always come first. And it's not necessarily productive because I start seeing myself saying, well, just take a vacation with a book. And it's saying to me, okay, overload.
I totally get that. I'm a bit of a workaholic myself, and I have learned to balance and bring into my work the things that I love. So like for example, I love having great conversations. So ta-da, we now have a podcast where I get to have great conversations. So I'm working, but I'm also having fun, right? And I love to hike. So I make time every day to walk outside and get connected to the earth and back to myself every single moment. Yes, finding that balance is really important. And I love this idea of this journal because I was thinking I'm going to have to start one of those where especially when I have a bad day, instead of ending with all the doom and the gloom in my mind, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to rewrite that day and think of it as here's how the beginning of a grand adventure just started and turn that into an incredible story of my life. Because, and here's something I learned a long time ago. I was on jury duty, and there were two lawyers, the defense and the prosecutor. Both of them had the same five facts. Both of them told completely different stories using those same five facts. And then the jury was supposed to say, this is what really happened, right? We got to decide what was quote unquote reality. And that watching that process, because they were both very convincing lawyers, watching that process, it was like, wow, this is how reality gets created, is by the story that you tell. And so if you tell, oh, I have these five facts that happened to me today, and I tell a bad story, a negative story, then that becomes reality. Or I can swap and say, let's tell a positive story, which is what your journaling is talking about doing, is reframing that into a positive story, a positive reality that I can believe in. Yeah, I really like that idea a lot, Shire. I'm gonna be using that starting today. When you see women who are still holding back, not because they lack the ability to go forward, but because they are either seeking approval still or they're fearful of the uncertainty. What or how do you respond? How would you speak to them, encourage them?
Sometimes it's tough because, they bring up really good points. But what I say to them is let's take the flip side. If something bad happened in your life tomorrow and it changed everything, how would you feel? What would you think about? Are you going to be disappointed with how you spent the time? Are you going to have regrets? Like you have to think about you at some point. If you're so afraid that other people are going to disapprove or move away from you because of that, then maybe you need to think about more than just what you want to do with yourself and who you're spending time with. Relationships change and you have to really reflect on that part too. Um, Sometimes we grow apart from people because we've changed and they've changed, or maybe they haven't changed. So, I mean, there comes a tipping point, and don't let it be something really bad.
I like that. Just thinking about what if your life turned for the worse right now, tomorrow, and then you look back over your life and would you have regrets? Would you, and especially as we get older, I think that question it cuts more deeply around the life we've lived and the legacy that we might be leaving behind, the contribution or the gifts that we have used our life to give. So that is a great question to ask ourselves. Shar, you have built your own business, while navigating real life demands from family, from home, and all the stuff that comes with midlife. Oh, tell us, what did it require of you internally to shift from a career in working for someone into something that is truly you?
A lot of passion,
Mhm.
because you have to be passionate about something to commit to it when you've got a lot of other things going on, but also the ability to kind of block time for things. I'm terrible about focus. It's just who I am. If you told me to focus for the next 5 hours on something immediately, I would be doing something else. So instead, I kind of make blocks of time, and that's probably part of the reason why owning my own business works better, because 9 to 5, it's not necessarily me.
Mhm.
Um, but I make blocks of time in the day to accomplish things in a way that feels natural. So when my kids were still in high school and they were learning to drive, there was that block of time in the morning that was for them to drive with them to school and to have that joy. And then there was a block of time that they knew I absolutely had to do work. So, don't interrupt mom unless we have this joke because I was a medical transcriptionist at one point, and you got to listen and focus, and they were little. So the question was always, is someone dying, bleeding, or is the house on fire? So that's like the language we use in our house when someone's like really trying to concentrate and accomplish. And there was that block. But then, I'd come back and do something else. Sometimes I do things like housework. Um, but giving myself those different times and also realizing, housework's kind of a mundane task. It's the perfect time to reflect on something when you're trying to figure something out. So there are ways to get it all done and still have time to think and breathe.
I'm laughing because I will often go do laundry when I'm stuck. It's like, oh, I think I'll go do a load of laundry and do the laundry, and that's when I'm thinking about things. And it suddenly I come back to whatever I was struggling with, and it seems like the answer is obvious. But yeah.
Yeah.
So this block of time strategy really puts you in the moment. It says, okay, for this block of time, this is what my task is, and this is what my focus is on. And I'm not going to focus on anything else but that. And then you found a way to help your family help you stay in that. as a way to get things done. Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Fantastic. All right. What do you think is the difference between expressing something honestly versus performing or trying to perceive things in a certain way? And I guess what I'm asking here is if you're looking from the outside to someone's behavior, what would it look like if they were honest and authentic with themselves versus trying to be or do whoever they think the world should be?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I guess in some ways that looks a little bit different for different people.
Hmm.
Just thinking about some of the people I know in my life right now. I have a friend who lost her job and it kind of created this void for her because what she did was part of who she was. And now I see her struggling for that who am I and who do I want to be? And she's decided to take a job that I think she thinks ticks the boxes for other people. It's logical, pays the bills, that kind of stuff. Um, but I don't think it's the honest and authentic who she wants to be, what she wants to do. And I don't know, there's like just kind of this cloud about her. And when she talks about certain things, it kind of sounds rehearsed. There's just this sort of when you're honest, transparent, and well, happy, you can just kind of hear the joy and passion in someone's voice. And it could be talking about going grocery shopping, but there's a quality to the way people interact when they've reached that point of honesty. They're more energetic because they're energizing themselves with those things.
And I love that answer because why I asked that question is because not because I want to look at other people and figure out whether they're being honest with themselves, but really from the outside, how would I look if I was truly honest and authentic with who I am and following my dreams? And what I got from your answer was, well, those people are usually pretty happy. They do rely on logic, but it's not the sole source of all of their decisions. There is intuition that operates for them as well. They seem joyful, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you look at your own life and say, I am drudgery, I am, every day I get up and I do all the things on my to-do list and I go to bed feeling like I accomplished something, but there is no joy, there is no happiness. Okay, well then let's stop for a minute and start having a conversation around what would it look like if you were doing something different that created that joy, and how can you integrate that more into your life? Recently, someone asked me, how do happy people live? And so that's a question I've been thinking a lot about, just because. And you gave an answer. You gave an answer to me today. Happy people live in alignment with who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And people notice. But
Mhm.
people notice the other way too. If you're happy and you're generally happy and suddenly you're not, then people really do notice. Someone said to me recently, I had some stuff happen with the business and they just stopped and said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "What? Yeah, I'm fine. What do you mean?" But it's just because the way you carry yourself and so then if that changes, people notice.
People notice, either unconsciously or consciously, and good friends might say something, right? And ask you a nudging
Yeah.
little question. So for my last question today, I do want to ask, for someone who feels there is this quiet little nudge inside them, but they're not sure they're ready, what would
Mhm.
you want to have them understand about just beginning anyway, ready or not?
Well, you can't wait for tomorrow because it's definitely not promised. But you don't have to take a giant leap. You can start wherever feels comfortable for you. I do recommend a giant leap if you can, because if you're trying to juggle, multitask, then there is a tendency to put things aside that you really want. Um, but if it feels better, make a plan. But just find a way to start moving there that feels comfortable. If you rush it or you do something that feels like too big a risk, then you're back in that losing joy instead of gaining it. So you have to listen to yourself. You might have to journal for some time on it and reflect on what your concerns are and how you can overcome them, because you just have to think about, how do I make it so that when I lay in bed at night, I'm not thinking about all the things that I dread or that I'm worried about. How do I go to bed and feel happy? I kind of weigh it on the, if I'm thinking about all these things and I can't fall asleep, then I need to change something that's going on. I shouldn't lay in bed at night and have this sudden panic. If that happens, the warning signs are going off for me, and I need to change direction, because that's always when things happen to me. Like I have a panic attack as soon as the house is quiet and everyone's asleep, and now I'm like, I'm sitting here and I'm so panicked, and well, why did I let myself get there? I
Mhm.
I am the master of these things, so I can't let everything take over. I need to just find one thing that I can do and move it forward and go from there.
I love it. One small baby step. And action builds momentum. So
Yes.
when you do one little thing, you can do another little thing and another little thing. And pretty soon those little things turn into big things. And it's like a snowball. Yes. So very good. Well, let me say just from my heart, thank you so much for all of the honesty that you have brought into this conversation, Shire, and for the way that you have spoken or speak to so many women who do find themselves in this situation when there is something waiting in their hearts and their spirit to be expressed, even if it doesn't feel yet fully formed, they're not quite sure what it is. Your words have brought encouragement and inspiration to us. So thank you for that. I also really think this idea of journaling is very powerful, and learning how to create something of your own while still living within the context of the realities of life is a challenge. So thank you for sharing your story. And for those of you who are listening or watching, thank you for being here today, for taking the time to sit inside this conversation, not just to hear them, but to listen for what stirs you, what resonates with you, and moves you towards your dreams, your potential. If something in this episode has stirred you, even quietly, know that you do not have to rush it. Like Shire said, baby steps, baby steps. You don't have to silence it. That's what's most important. And you can actually learn more by reaching out and connecting with Shire. Her links are in the show notes. Shire is also gifting, for those of you who are interested in potentially starting a business, an ebook she's written on Facebook strategies, that will be also available in the show notes if you are exploring that as an option in your life. And if you find that you are in a season where something is really shifting, where what's been true is changing for you, but what you're to do next is not really clear, I do want to invite you in July, to join us for the Next Chapter Summit that we'll be having. There'll be more information in the show links or the show notes for that as well. It's a space where women 50 and older who are navigating transition come together and begin to get oriented to what is next in a way that feels grounded, honest, and truly, truly their own. You'll find, again, more information about that summit in the show notes. And so until next time, all of you who are listening or watching, please stay true to yourself and just simply trust that what is taking form inside you is right, is perfect in every way, and embrace it. Thanks for listening.